So my name's Dave. I run a company called The Envisioners. I am the Chief Envisioning Officer. Check me out. It's my company. I do what I like. I've spent a long time working in technology. The thing I've realized, the most special thing about technology is not the technology itself, it's the human beings that use it. So I've created a company that projects out into the future and looks to try and understand how human beings will want to live, work, and play. Because I think if we know what the human beings are going to do, then we can be a lot better about choosing the right kind of technology for them to use. Now, I would love to tell you that I spend my life working with industry leaders, with academics, pouring through research reports, but actually, if you really want to know what I do for a living, you actually just have to ask my wife, because whenever we're out somewhere and somebody will inevitably say to her, "What does your husband actually do for a living?" And she just looks at me in scorns and says, "Him? Who just talks bollocks for a living." It's fair enough. So actually, I've spent 3 decades. I've spent my entire career working in the technology industry. I have worked for or with the world's largest technology companies. I've worked with Apple, Facebook, Google. I have just come out of working 12 years at Microsoft. I have spent the majority of those 3 decades inside the second smallest rooms inside your organization. These are the rooms with no natural daylight, just the whirring of the fans of the equipment and the blinking of the LEDs to keep me company. I have gone to the extremes of personal grooming to grow a beard and a ponytail. That's how committed I am to my... Classically, we were in the conference office earlier, and the lady should be here. I was just talking to Tad, waiting for my lunch voucher, and a lady walks in. "Oh, look, you must be IT. Could you help me with my..." Fantastic. And guess what? I also quite like Star Trek, man. Right? This is my 8th birthday party. It's my mum and my auntie Mabel. Right, I'll make it relevant. When I was 8 years old, Star Trek taught me this amazing lesson that technology is supposed to be a force for good in our lives. It's this thing that lifts up human capability, helps us achieve more than we could do on our own. This is the point of technology. This is the purpose of technology, and it's why I've dedicated the last 30 years of my life to working in the technology industry. But my problem is I look around at how we all use that technology today, and I don't see this liberating force. I see a prison. I see something that constrains how we work, controls how we think, and quite frankly, I refuse to accept that as our future. So a few years ago, I set out on a crusade. I started to write books. The first book I wrote was called Business Reimagined, and it's about how the way we work today doesn't work. I followed that with another book called The Rise of the Humans, and I'm going to talk to you about this story today. But there are 2 things that you need to know about my books. The first is that I am a relatively cheap date. If you're interested in either of these books, you can download them for free on Amazon if you have a Kindle, or tweet me and I'll send you a download code for your own copy. But perhaps the most important thing you should know about my books is that, and I'm always a bit embarrassed about having to confess to this, but I feel like I'm part of the EuRA family now, so I'll open up a bit. And look, there was a point in my past life where I was a bit down on my luck, and I ended up doing some things for money that I'm not really proud of today. I was a management consultant, okay? As a result of being a management consultant, you find no answers in my books, because I was a good consultant. But what you will find, just as you will find in this presentation, is a series of provocations. If I have done my job properly today, I will have challenged how you think about technology, not just in your organization, but the way you use it as an individual. Now, you will have by now realized that I'm a thought leader. You know I'm a thought leader because I find it very hard to stand still. And every now and again, I'll talk really loudly, and then I'll talk quite quietly. These are not skills that you just acquire. You have to go to thought leader school to get these skills. And there's another thing that they teach you at Thought Leader School. The first thing, in fact, that they teach you about your presentations with thought leadership is you cannot be a thought leader if your presentation does not contain one of the 2 following things. Firstly, it could be a picture of Steve Jobs and an inspirational quote. Doesn't matter if Steve said it or not, just picture Steve Jobs, inspirational quote. I've gone for the other one, which is this chart. No thought leader could exist without this, the exponential curve, charting the growth of technology. This is actually my favorite ever exponential curve because it plots the number of mentions of the phrase exponential growth over the last 6 decades. I can think of no better way to describe the situation that we find ourselves in today. And then the second thing they teach you at Thought Leadership Presentation School is that every presentation must have statistics. Here are my statistics about the adoption of digital technology in our personal and private and professional lives. I'm bored of talking about how many people have smartphones. Seriously, ask yourselves today, do you know anybody within the age of 8 to 80 who is not engaged with technology on a daily basis? There are some minorities, but typically we are in technology. We love technology. We use it every single day. But my final piece of evidence to show you that we truly are a global digital society is the existence of this product, the iPotty. This is a real product. You can buy this product on Amazon. Now listen, I have been through potty training and there were times in that process where I thought, you know what, actually, this would be quite good. I just think if we're at a point where this exists and we all, instead of, getting surprised by, oh, actually, that makes a lot of sense. We're done. We are a digital society. But my problem gets worse because now we look at how we use technology. And we use this amazing technology to do things that we replicate old ways of working, the processes you have in your organization, the procedures, the way we structure our organizations, and especially those of your clients. These are processes and organizational structures that were designed in the 19th century. And all we do with this amazing technology is we make these old Victorian ways of working a bit quicker. But it's worse than that. Our children walk around. They spend their days with access to a device in their pocket that has access to every single fact that we know about our society. Every fact, everything we know about the world. We all have access to this information. And what do we choose to do with this information apart from destroying democracy? Cat videos. This is it. This is the best we can manage. Well, the time has to change. And we get deeper into our organization. We look at productivity and something that I know that we obsess about. The problem with productivity is, again, it fixates on the efficiency of work. It makes us focus on the process of work. So when we get new technology that could fundamentally transform not just how we work, but how we live as well, we never get to that transformational capability because we're too busy replicating those old ways of working. The technology has constrained us. Quick random sample of this audience, right? Who amongst you does not get enough email? Right? I don't even have to write a punchline for that joke. We get this was not what we were supposed to do. This is not the gift of technology. And I worry that unless we change our behavior, unless we humans rise up and change how we use the technology, this concept of working smarter is never going to happen. The only choice we're going to have left is simply to work harder. Now, I'm not prepared to accept that as our future, and I would love you to humor me for the next 30 or 40 minutes to come and see how different this world could be. I want you to break through the digital barrier, to see the potential of what technology offers, not just your organization, but what you could do for your clients, what you could do in your personal lives. And it starts here. It starts with the really boring bit. It starts with the world of data. And data, what you have to understand, data is the fuel of your future. It will be the thing that dictates your ability to survive. And the interesting thing about data is we've always had it, but typically we treat data as a byproduct of our business. We do whatever it is we do as a business, and we sell products and services, and we generate data. And every now and again, we'll look at the data and we'll reflect on the products and services. This is not the future. The future is looking at that data. What is it that we can do? What could we infer from that data to invent new business models, to change the way we approach our customers, to predict what might happen? Because when you have lots of data, your view of the world changes. And we're moving into a world where we're going to have more data than ever before. And this principle about helping us take a systemic view, looking right across based on this rich view of data, is the thing that's going to change the game. Now, we can bring this principle to life. It's one of my favorite examples. I've got two cars on the screen. I've got a Toyota Prius and a Land Rover Defender, a 4x4 SUV. Which one of these two vehicles would you say is better for the planet, more environmentally friendly? Put your hand up if you think it's the Toyota Prius. Put your hand up if you think it's a trick question and it's the Land Rover Defender. Put your hand up if you want to be a management consultant. And you know the answer is, well, it depends, right? Because it does depend. It depends on how much data you use to answer the question. If we take a narrow view of the data, and this is what we typically do to ourselves as organizations, we take the data that's easily accessible. Well, let's look at fuel consumption. Well, of course, if you look at fuel consumption, the best of these two vehicles for the planet is the Toyota Prius. That thing runs on water and pixie dust, hugs trees when you drive by. Not like the Defender, drinks diesel 12 miles to the gallon. Well, the Americans, back in 2008, they took a different approach to answering this question. They took a big data approach. They amassed all of the data. They essentially looked at from the creation of the components that go to make this vehicle through to the point at which this vehicle is thrown on the scrap heap. The best of these two vehicles for the planet is actually the Land Rover Defender. Now, why? Because over 67% of every Land Rover ever made worldwide is still on the road. You cannot break these vehicles. Trust me, I've tried several times. And if you do succeed in breaking one, you can fix them at the roadside with bubblegum and baling twine. Now look, the point of this example is not to advertise Land Rover cars. Although if any of you have got any connections and they're looking for sponsorship opportunities, obviously I'm available. The point of this example is look what happened to the answer when we added more data. The answer fundamentally changes. There is not a question that you're asking of yourselves, of your organization, or yourselves as an individual that will not fall prey to exactly the same principle. Your job now is to get as much data as you should be smothering yourselves in data at every available opportunity because it will change your perspective of the world. But you've got to be careful. And this is not just about GDPR. We're going to move into a world, a data-oriented world, and we're going to be so tempted by all of this data. We're going to start smashing the data together to try and get insight. And the danger is when we start to smash data together, we end up in a world of spurious correlations. This is a problem that is so severe, many, many people are thinking about the problems and how we avoid them. There's a professor in one of the Northeast US universities. He is so worried about this problem. He's written books on spurious correlation, and he's demonstrated the danger. Here's one of his favorite examples of mine. This professor took two really important global data sets. He took data on the average surface temperature of the Earth, and he plotted it against the number of pirates operating in the Indian Ocean. Two important data sets, I think you'll agree. And what you'll see, ladies and gentlemen, this professor found, with only 98% correlation, is that as the number of pirates operating in the Indian Ocean dwindles, the average surface temperature of the Earth increases. Yes. On the basis, it sounded like Yoda then, didn't I? Increase it does. Yeah. On the basis of this evidence, I would put it to you, if we truly care about the planet, if we really want to save the planet, it's not renewable energy, it's not wind or solar, simply more pirates. Arr! This is the danger of a world of spurious data correlations. You're all going to be tempted to do it because the data's going to be right there in the palm of your hands. You've got to resist. The data has to be related. You've got to follow the rules of GDPR to make sure. But there are other dangers too. We're going to be surrounded by all of this data. Much of this data will be anonymized. But the problem is, when you deal with such a quantity of data, that anonymization sometimes fails to work. This was in the news recently. I don't know if anybody saw this chart. I don't know if any of you are runners or cyclists, and you may be familiar with an app called Strava. Strava is an app that works in conjunction with your phone. It tracks the routes that you cycle or run. And every year or so, Strava, the company, they publish this amazing data set, totally anonymized, of all of the routes, all of the cycle paths around the world where people are using its product. Now, this data is so vast that most runners and most cyclists use it, regardless of their chosen vacation. This is actually, the bright lines are paths that have been used frequently by Strava users. This is a secret military base. This is the squaddies who, when they're off patrol, are walking around the military base to get their exercise. And that data is going back to Strava. Strava have published this information, completely unaware that it exists in there, but because it exists in the public domain, it doesn't take much for people to weed into the data, and all of a sudden they've got a data issue on their hands. So we're in this dangerous world of the power of data is going to come to all of us. So we have to be thoughtful as we can. But don't let me scare you off, because the real gift of data is yet to come. And this is where we use data not in a reflective way, not to interpret how things happened, but instead to predict how things will happen. Now, this is not some half-baked down the pub on a Saturday afternoon who's going to win the horse race prediction. This is statistically significant prediction. Companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, this is their business. When I was at Microsoft, one of my favorite projects is we did a series of these predictions based on a world of data and social media and search input. At the time I was working in the UK, we did the Scottish referendum. We got that right within 2% of the public vote. We did the last Football World Cup. We got 15 out of 16 World Cup games right. Microsoft, as you may be aware, is a consumer company. We did X Factor, we did Pop Idol, and even what turned out to be the highlight of my Microsoft career, the Eurovision Song Contest. Oh yes. Better still, these organizations, they make the algorithms that power this kind of prediction available to everybody. You simply point your data to the algorithm, and it will start to give you predictions around your business. And the question I need to leave with you at this moment in the presentation is, how would you choose to run your organization, to run your business, to run your industry in a world where you can predict what will happen rather than reflect on what has happened? This is a question that you maybe don't need to answer today, but you need to answer it soon, because it's already happening in some other industries. Now, what's making this possible is what I like to call a technological Copernican shift. And that's probably because I spend far too long on Wikipedia looking for obscure quotes. A Copernican shift is simply this. In Copernicus, in 1534, he rocks up to all of his academic buddies. He says, "You buggers have got it all wrong. It's not the sun that goes round the earth, it's the earth that goes round the sun." And in that instant, everything we knew about the world around us, a couple of millennia of science, got turned on its head. Now, I would argue the same thing is about to happen to our relationship with technology. Because if you think about it, when we humans use technology today, we have to gravitate around it. You have to pick up your phone, you sit in front of your PC, your television, you sit inside your car. But we are fast emerging into a world where the technology actually surrounds us. It's embedded into every floor, every wall, every window, every light bulb. Every floor tile is a device that is connected and spewing out data about the world around us. The floor tiles, for example, will know not just how many times they've been stood on, but how many times I've stood on them versus how many times you've stood on them. And if you take to this ocean of data, this cacophony of data, and you add a layer of what I will call ambient intelligence, these are algorithms who work on our behalf. They use their innate personal knowledge of us as individuals to make sense of this data, to deliver value to us. Now, you're already using that technology today. If you have an iPhone, you're familiar with Siri. If you use Android, you'll be familiar with Google Assistant or Google Now. If you use Windows, you'll be familiar with Cortana. These are all the examples of the first generation of ambient intelligent agents whose job it is to get to know you on a very intimate, personal level and use that knowledge to deliver value to you. I'm not quite there with the value bit. What makes this technology possible is the technology that I believe is the most important technology that anybody on the planet is working on today. And it's a technology called machine learning. Sometimes it's referred to as artificial intelligence. Those two things are slightly different, but for the sake of argument, we'll call them the same thing. All machine learning and AI really is statistical-based pattern recognition. It's the ability to spot patterns in lots and lots of data. And I bet you will remember the first time you ever became aware of that technology, because I bet you it was when you were going to a search query, and as you were typing in your query, the search engine was completing the sentence before you'd finished typing. The way that happens, statistical-based pattern recognition. The search engine isn't psychic. It's basically saying, given the characters that you've just typed in, and against the 3.5 billion queries that have been typed into me today, the statistical probability of you going on to complete the sentence like this is 99%, so I'm going to suggest that as the next answer. That basic ability to spot patterns in lots of data is the thing that's going to change every aspect, not just of our relationship with technology, it will change our relationship with each other as human beings. It will even, in the fullness of time, I would argue, change how we define what it means to be human. But before we get further into that, I need to position what artificial intelligence is and what artificial intelligence isn't. Because pop culture and the media do us a massive disservice. Most times, the media will run an article, a news story about AI, and there will be this picture. It won't be exactly this picture, but a very similar picture. It'll be an humanoid-looking robot looking pensively into the middle distance. This is not AI. If you want to know what AI actually looks like, this is what AI looks like. It's a data center. It's lots and lots of data being processed. This concept of robots taking over the world is science fiction and will remain science fiction for the next few decades at least. But what I really want you to grapple with, what I really want you to come to terms with, is that AI isn't about intelligence. That even the guy who invents the term is that there are two things wrong with the term artificial intelligence. The first is it's kind of not artificial. It exists. And the second is, actually, it's not intelligent either. But apart from that, it was a great term. What I really want you to think about is that artificial intelligence is simply automation. And just as 200 years ago, when I would have turned up to your business, to your weaving mill, with my spinning jenny, and I transformed the world, I'm going to do the same to your organization today, except I'm not going to be automating the mechanical processes of work. I'm going to be automating the cognitive parts of your work. Anything you do that follows an established pattern, anything you do where it takes a human being less than a second to think what a response is to a given challenge, these are areas that can be easily and quickly automated automated by AI. We're seeing it in industries like call centers. We're seeing it in industries like accountancy, in the legal profession. This is the big disruptor in terms of what's going to happen to the labor market. And if we get it right, it won't be that we lose 30% of the labor market. It's that we create 30% more capacity for the humans to do the stuff that the machines can't do. Because this technology does change the world. Here's an example of something that exists today. And what you see is two people. The lady is putting just earbuds into her ear. They're connected to the gentleman's phone, which is connected to the internet. As the gentleman speaks English, she hears French, real time. As she speaks French, he hears English, real time. No human beings involved, no translators, just some very clever algorithms doing so. You can do this on your phones. If you've got a smartphone, you can do this with Google Translate, Bing Translate. And I need you to think about the transformational nature of this kind of stuff because it changes our world. I have a 12-year-old son. On the basis of this technology, do I bother to get my 12-year-old son to learn a foreign language at school? Because by the time he enters his world of work, it will be a redundant skill. No, I get that's provocative. I get there are lots of reasons why we learn foreign languages. And of course, my son, he's going to learn 1 or 2 languages just like everybody else. But as a result of this technology, he will, when he emerges from his education, not will he only be able to speak the 1 or 2 languages he's learned, he'll be able to speak another 152 languages fluently. He'll be able to travel the world communicating with locals as if he were a local, which will fundamentally change his cultural experience, not to mention his job prospects. This stuff changes everything. It's such a big deal that even the computer scientists are excited about it. And if you've ever worked with computer scientists, and I've spent a lot of time with these guys, you know it takes a lot to get them excited. They talk about it in the context of the 3rd computer age. This is how significant it is. And just for completeness, the 1st computer age is the world of the analog computer. This is Victorian times. Charles Babbage and his analytical engine, a design so complicated, Babbage never finished it in his lifetime. It took the Science Museum in London until 2006 to finish his design. You're familiar with the 2nd computer age, which is the world of the microprocessor. But the 3rd computer age is fundamentally different. This belongs to machine learning and artificial intelligence. And it's different for 2 reasons. But before I can explain those 2 reasons, the first thing I've got to show you how stupid computers are today. Because computers today, in the first 2 computer ages, they need explicit instructions from us. They need to be told absolutely everything they need to do. If I want to get a computer arbitrarily to walk through that door, I have to give it all sorts of information. I have to tell it where the door is in relation to where the computer is. I have to tell it what kind of handle it is. Does it push? Does it pull? Does it turn? Does it go? All of these things. If I fail in any one of these instructions, that computer will fail in its task. This is not true in the 3rd computer age, because in the 3rd computer age, I don't tell the computers what to do. They learn. If I want to get an algorithm to walk through that door, I simply show it 1 million videos of people walking through the door, and it will learn for itself. This is exactly what's happening in this video. This robot has not been programmed to open this specific door. It's programmed to recognize a door. It recognizes a handle. It knows that it has to turn it. It knows that it has to pull back. And then this is the creepy bit. They're coming for us. You know that. This is the power of this difference between learning versus instruction. And what I love about it is actually how we human beings learn. When we're at school, we think that we're taught the rules. We're taught the logic of language. When I was taught English as a kid, I was taught things like I before E except after C. What they didn't teach me is that there are actually 923 exceptions to that rule. There are more exceptions to the I before E rule than there are to the bloody rule itself. Language isn't logical. It doesn't follow rules. It follows patterns. And we innately know this as human beings because from the day you learn to read until the day you die, we create and curate and tend to our own personal pattern of language. Every time you read something, you're making your own personal pattern of language slightly better. This was proven by some research in Cambridge University, and the research basically said that if you speak English, and if you don't speak English, this will work in whatever is your native language, but as long as I keep the first and last characters of the word in the right place, I can mix up all of the other characters. I can even misspell words, and you'll still be able to read the text. Can you read the text? Of course you can. Because what's happening, your brain is looking at that. It's not calling on the rules. It's not calling on the logic. It's calling on the pattern that you've created in your lifetime of reading. This is exactly what the algorithms do. And every time you read it, it makes it slightly better. And the other reason why this is a great example, because it shows you the limitation of today's machine learning, because the algorithms are only as good as the patterns they've been provided with. What do you think happens when I show this slide to someone who's just beginning to learn to speak English? If I'd shown it to my son, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago when he was forming his own language skills. You can't read it. It makes no sense. And this is another reason why the algorithms aren't going to take over the world anytime soon. But the power of this learning is just profound. And what it enables us to do, things like speech recognition, a field also called computer vision, the ability for computers to see images and understand what they are. This is an example, this is a real example from a hospital in Cambridge in the UK, where we're using computer vision to recognize tumors in brain scans. Now, typically, it would take a good consultant about 6 hours to go through these scans to be able to spot a tumor. These algorithms can do that same process in 30 minutes. And the genius of this story is actually what the consultant then chooses to do with the time that's saved, because they don't do another 6 scans. They use that quality time to spend more time delivering the human part of the equation, which is to spend more time with the patient at what is a crucial point in their prognosis. This fundamental technology changes all of these aspects in how we deal with technology. So that's the first big difference. The second big difference is simply this. In the first 2 computer ages, we're used to a world of binary. Everything on a computer today is a 1 or a 0. It's yes or it's no. It's black or it's white. This is not true in a world of algorithms. In a world of algorithms, there is no yes, there is no no. It's simply a maybe. Everything we see is a probability. It's a probabilistic determination. And the challenge is that today, the decisions that we're making on the basis of these probabilities, they're pretty trivial. Which bar should we go to tonight in Dubrovnik? Which restaurant should we go to? Which mountain bike should I buy? But increasingly, the decisions we're going to make on these from these algorithms are going to be more and more central to our lives. I think it's entirely feasible that within the next 5 years, I will go to my doctor and my doctor will say, hey, Dave, we think there's a 68% probability that you're going to get prostate cancer. As a human being, how do I choose the correct course of human action based on an ambiguous probability? Your clients will get told, we think you should buy this business with a 78% chance of success. As human beings, the one thing that we have to get better at is dealing with ambiguity and choosing how we balance the best of these 2 worlds. That we move on away from this adversarial battle. This is not humans versus machines. The machines will not take our jobs. The algorithms will not take over. But instead, we've got to figure out how do we take the best of human ability and combine it with the best of technological capability. And I think we move towards this thing that I call human outcomes. And there's a little story here. This is actually a picture of my son. We're standing on, this is Long Beach on the west coast of Vancouver Island in Canada. I have Canadian citizenship, so we spend a lot of time out in Canada. And to me, it was an example of how far we've yet to come with the technology to deliver real-life human outcomes. Because you've been in this situation before. As a family, you decide you're going on holiday. We don't have travel agents anymore, so we go online. But what we think is a good service is actually a series of technological hoops that we make the humans jump through. So first of all, we have to do what we all do that first night. We have to get together as a family around the computer and spend that evening arguing about where we're going to go. Right, okay, fine. We're going to go to Vancouver again, apparently. So now I know where we're going to go. How are we going to get there? Well, there's another evening I will spend in front of the computer looking at airline websites and Skyscanner to find the flights. Now I know where we're going to go, how we're going to get there, where we're going to stay. Well, there's another evening. You get the point. Each one of these is a hoop that the human has to jump through. As a human being, what do I actually want? I just want to take my family to Vancouver. I want to be able to say to the system, do you know what? I want to take my family to Vancouver in April. And the system knows who my family is, knows where Vancouver is, knows the airlines I like to fly, knows the hotels I like to stay, knows the things I like to do in my spare time, and on my behalf negotiates with all of the disparate service providers and brings back that single human outcome, which is the holiday package. Now apply that principle to your business. Apply that to all of the elements that you have to stitch together for your clients, and imagine a world where that could be not just automated, but infinitely personalized to suit your clients. And the best bit about all of this is actually got nothing to do with the technology, but actually it's got everything to do with us humans. Because we love to moan about how we're terrible at change and, oh God, you know, I hate this new technology. But actually, we're really good at change. We've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. And actually, there are examples that play out in our society all the time. There's one playing out right now, and it's this scenario. And I would bet the way that you respond to this scenario has probably changed within the last 12 months. Would you say that's fair? There's a few nods. 12 months ago, I'd have approached the cashier and I would have typed in 4 digits. Now I'm going to tap my card or I'm going to tap my phone. I can only give you UK numbers for this, but do you know when contactless payments was introduced into the UK? 2008. This is how long. That change has taken about 10 years to come about before people are absolutely confident with the technology. But all that has to happen is that once that experience exists, and it's predictable, and it's easy, but fundamentally delivers value to those people that use it, society flips. They just switch. And we have to remember that, because as we're designing solutions, as we're building new technology, we're not building technology for the dumb user anymore. We're building technology for people who love the experience, who want more. And here's a story, from the UK. It played out last summer, actually. It's a brilliant story that, to me, just proves the point of where we're headed as a society at a certain level. And the story's this, right? So there's this normal, everyday human being. Okay, he's a DJ, but he's traveling from Glasgow in Scotland to Sheffield in the north of England. It's actually a long train ride. It's a 4-hour train journey. He realizes he's made a fundamental flaw in his travel planning. He's got onto the train. It's very early in the morning. It's about 11 a.m., so it's quite early for a DJ. And he's on there, and he realizes the buffet car is closed. So he has got no chance of getting any kind of refreshment, no food, no nothing. But then he thinks, hang on a minute. I'm a DJ, right? I've got me a big following on social media, FaceTime, Twitbox, something like that. Right, Tad? Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tweet out to my posse, right? One member of my posse will be on the platform between here and Sheffield. They'll pop into the shop, pick me up a sandwich, and they'll bring it to my train. Turns out it's not that popular. But then he steps back and he thinks, hang on a minute, I live in this amazing world. I live in a world where I have real-time information about the location of me and my train. Curiously, Domino's have the equivalent information for their pizza. In this amazing world of interconnectedness, it is theoretically possible that I should be able to triangulate those two pieces of information and get pizza delivered to a moving train. This is exactly what he sets out to do. He figures that between Glasgow and Sheffield, the sweet spot is this. You thought you weren't going to learn anything today, right, in this conference. I'm telling you now, if ever you're looking for pizza on a train from Glasgow to Sheffield, Darlington, right, that is your sweet spot. He figures out it's Darlington. He orders his pizza. He gets the confirmation text. Look at his happy little DJ face. I'm going to get pizza. The train pulls in. The brakes go on. Look what happens.
Oh, there we go. Yes, Domino's. Thank you very much. That's for you.
There we go. And you've got a ham, mushroom, beef and pineapple pizza. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye.
So there are a few things that strike me about this video. Number one, this is not Silicon Bloody Valley, right? This is Sheffield. Yeah, if you've ever been to the north of England, you know what I'm talking about, right? Secondly, look at the expressions on the faces of the people, of Domino's staff. It's like they do this every single day of their lives. Look at this guy's face. Look how smug this guy was. I would be that smug if I just had pizza delivered to a moving train. Now, look, the point of this story is not just that it's a great story, and it is a great story. This is a story about this guy, who to me is a normal, everyday human being. He's one of you. He's one of your employees. He's one of your clients. He's one of their employees. He is an individual who goes about his normal, everyday life, and he uses technology to make it better. And he sat there, and he thought, do you know what? I had a brilliant experience ordering a pizza the other day, and I've got this information here. I wonder if I could do that. And he is the guy, he or she are the people that we have to build the solutions of tomorrow for. We cannot build the solutions of today because the users, they're expecting far too much. And I think of it in the terms of that weird desk toy that your dad or your mad uncle used to have, the Newton's cradle. Because I think every now and again, you need people like me in technology to come along to you and say, do you know what? There's this great new technology coming. And I need to give you just a little gentle nudge to say, do you know what? Contactless payment. You might want to give that a go. And if I've done my job properly, if the technology delivers value to your life, what happens? You come back and you give me the equivalent nudges. That was brilliant, Dave. Now I want more. So what can you do with this? Well, the first thing, you've got to think about your people. You're in the world that deals with talent. And the thing is, we've got to think very differently about talent in a world where artificial intelligence is coming. And we've got to think about skills rather than tools. And the thing is, we've had this for many, many years. I think about it in the context of my own family. My grandparents, they went to school in London and actually in the Midlands, and neither of their schools had electricity. My old man, my dad, he went to school in a world without personal computers. This is actually the first computer I got to use. I went to school, hell, I went to university in a world without the World Wide Web. And it continues generation after generation because my son, he's going to school in a world without quantum computers. And the point is, if we only ever teach our children about the tools that exist at this moment in time, we are never going to prepare them for their future. Instead, we have to focus on the skills that will make them successful. And the skills are not whether they can use Word or PowerPoint or even specific coding languages. The skills are far more fundamental. I actually think there are 3 key human attributes that will be fundamental to the success of individuals in the future of work. And they're simply this. It's creativity. I can create incredible algorithms that they can replicate Rembrandt's paintings or Mozart's music, but they cannot do anything other than the things that they've been taught to do. We're going to need a new generation of individuals, people in the workforce who can be creative in their approach to work. We need people who can be problem solvers, who can deal with a very fast-moving, ambiguous world and find a way through it. Similarly, and we called this out already before, we need humans that understand other humans. I've got algorithms that can divine your emotional state. Just by looking at your faces, the algorithm can figure out whether you're bored or happy or sad. But it doesn't know what those things mean. It can't change the tone of its response in relation to having that information. We need a new generation of people in the workplace, and by generation I don't necessarily mean age, but people who understand what it means to be human. They have empathy. They bring that with them for every service. They can use the best of technology, but then apply the best of humanity over the top. And then the final human skill comes back to accountability. Just because the algorithm says that's the answer doesn't necessarily mean it's right. We need people who are able to understand the answer from the algorithms and then use the best of human judgment to divine the best course of human action. And that's the skills that we're going to need. More specifically, what can you do in your organizations today to start you down that path? The first is you have to digitize your business. You have to digitize every single asset in your organization. And I'm not just talking about the physical assets, I'm talking about the intangible assets as well. This is not just about your vehicles, your machinery, your offices, your computers. This is about your knowledge. This is about the things that you know about your clients, the people in your team who know most about different industries. You have to make that exist in digital terms. Because if it doesn't exist in the digital realm, I can't innovate with it. And the best thing is we're moving into a world where it's becoming easier and easier to light up these invisible, intangible assets. Here's an example of something that's already going on. Does anybody want to take a guess at what kind of data this is? Shout it out. Yeah, it's fitness data. This is actually a very specific kind of fitness data because it's the fitness data for my dog. This is Meg. We've got any dog owners in the room? Yeah, actually, you don't need to be a dog owner to play this game, but you'll recognize that Meg is a border collie. If you know your dogs, you'll know that border collies are essentially the sociopaths of the dog world, right? We adopted Meg and her sister a couple of years ago, and Meg has this particular trait where she thinks that all human beings are sheep, right? And frankly, after the last couple of years in the UK, I'm not sure she's wrong, but anyway, a little bit of politics. And the thing is, when you take Meg for a walk, and it happened yesterday, is, a walk, and because she's worried that the human is a sheep, she will do the entire walk backwards, locked on to the human being for fear that the human being may stray from the path, right? Now, I'm a responsible dog owner. I get a bit worried about this when we'd first had her. Her sister, meanwhile, is running around the field doing the things that dogs do. And I'm thinking, well, what do I do? How do I know that she's getting enough exercise? Well, what do? I'm a bloody nerd. So what do? I stick a collar on her neck, and I know exactly what she's doing now. I can correlate her performance. We've got a third one since then. I'm bloody knackered. Right? But now I know exactly. I've brought that data to life. We do it to ourselves as human beings. How many of you have got some kind of personal fitness device like this? I love this device. This device tells me things like my heart rate. The thing I love about my heart rate is that pretty much, more or less, give or take, I've always had a heart rate, right? It's always been there. This makes it visible. This makes it so that I can look back in history and I can do things, every time I meet with my boss, my heart rate spikes. What's that about? You have to do this. You have to create a Fitbit for your organization so that you can start to look at that data and start to apply understanding to take the right course of human action, which means you need a data culture. You need people who understand the basics of data because the tools are going to get easier and easier to use. You don't need data scientists, but you do need to know how to frame the right question. And then there are some other things. We're moving into this world where the opportunity for you to deliver different experiences is going to fundamentally change as a result of technology. And there's a really simple way to think about this. If you want to deliver transformational experiences for your clients or for your employees, you have to recognize that you can only do that if you have access to two things. The first is that you need to empower everybody in your organization to be transformational. Everybody needs to feel that they can come up with new ideas or suggestions or even questions as to why we do things the way we do. And then the second thing, once you've got those people, understand that they're only ever going to be successful if they have access to the tools that enable them to work in transformational ways. You will not be, I promise you, no matter how hard you try, you're never ever going to be transformational over email. Not even as an attachment, right? It's just never going to happen. Now, this is a gamble for me because there's a bit of, again, British pop culture in this. Is anybody prepared to admit they know who these people are? Shout it out. Yes, the Funboy 3 and Bananarama. This was the height of British pop music in the mid-1980s. And they, crucially, had a hit single, which was a cover of a song called It Ain't What You Do, It's the... See, you already know the answer. I love you guys, right? There is no truer principle of our digital society than that. It ain't what you do, it's the way what you do. If you think what makes you special as an organization is the product and service that you do, you're dead wrong. I don't care who you are, I don't care what industry you're in, I don't care what business, what products and services you are. I guarantee you I will be able to go somewhere else in the world and buy an equivalent product for more or less the same price. The bit that makes you special, the bit that keeps your customers coming back is not those products and services. Don't get me wrong, they're an entry to be in business. It's how you choose to provide them. It's the way you engage with your clients, the community that you build in your industry. These are the hallmarks of industries that are going to survive well into the 21st century. So focus on them. Put energy into thinking about how are we going to change the way we deliver that service. Think about yourselves as individuals. How would I want that service to be delivered to me? But what it means is that you've got to focus on the outcome of what you do, not the process by which you do it. Now, trust me, this is not what you think it is. This comes from a long time ago when I was starting my career. I was doing some work in London, and I was there very, very early in the morning, uncharacteristically early for me. And as I'm coming out of King's Cross Station, and I'm walking down Euston Road, very busy road in central London, it's about 6 a.m. and there's this guy, he's a council worker, he's got a high-vis jacket, hard hat, and he's walking down the middle of the road, not the pavement, and he's putting these dollops of white powder at regular intervals in the middle of the road. Now it's early, I'm a curious guy, beginning of my career, so I walk up to him, I said, what are you doing? So I'm putting down elephant powder. Oh, what's that for? That keeps the elephants away. But there aren't any elephants in London. And he just looks at me and smiles. He goes, I know, it's good stuff, isn't it? I'm here all week. Your organizations, mine too, is full of elephant powder. Stuff you do that's completely redundant, irrelevant in a modern digital society. This is the stuff that holds us back. These are the processes that when you walk around your organization, you say, well, why do we do this like this? And when you get the answer, well, we've always done it like that, you know you've found elephant powder. You will never change unless you get rid of elephant powder. I want your job to get rid of the elephant powder. If you can get rid of this, then you can transform, you can become agile, you can change and live up to the opportunity that the technology delivers. And you need a new generation of leaders to do that, both in your clients and in your organizations. Leaders are no longer the people who stand on top of the tallest hill, shouting at everybody else and pointing in a single direction. Leaders do two things, good leaders anyway. They do the first thing, which is they make sure that everybody understands the purpose of the organization. This is what we're here to do. And the purpose is not what you mean to your customers, it's more about what you enable your customers to achieve as a result of being engaged with you. And if you've done that first thing as a leader, you do then the most important thing that a good leader can ever do, is you get out of the bloody way and you let your people get on with it. If you empower your people to work in that way, you create what I call an intelligent organism. These are organizations that are not rigid in structure. They're not inflexible, but they're malleable. They can, just like other organisms, when they change and they react to changes in their environment. These are the hallmarks of a successful organization going into the ambiguous, challenging world that we're going to go into. And then the final, I'm going to leave you with a couple of thoughts. One is about how you think. We talked earlier about creative thinking, and I was so pleased that you did. I have a similar sort of concept. I call it transformative thinking. But part of the challenge that we humans face, we humans, like I'm not something different, it's a bizarre phrase to use. So we tend to think that the future is always a straight line, and it's a straight line that's extrapolated from where we are today and where we were yesterday, and the future is always up and to the right. Well, the thing is, in a digitally connected society, the future is never a straight line. It bounces around like a pinball, and your ability to be successful is based on your ability to anticipate the ricochets of that pinball. Let me pick on an industry who I think is failing to think the right way about where they're going. This, and you will have similar examples from your own countries, this is one of the first ever autonomous vehicles that's been approved for use on UK highways. You can find trials of these in Coventry and Bristol and Milton Keynes, I think. And for me, it's this perfect example of poor thinking about the future. And it's easy for me to say that. But the reason is, we look at this, and on one hand, you can think just amazing technology, just incredible technology, to live in a world where we could create autonomous vehicles. What a fantastic thing. But then you start to look at the numbers, and the numbers tell a different story. Because the numbers will show you that we don't get to 50% of all miles driven autonomously until 2040. That number doesn't hit 100% until we reach 2070. Do you seriously want to tell me that by the time we get to 2070 that we will still feel that the best way to transport human beings around the local environment is inside a tin robotic box on wheels? That cannot be the case. Look what happened last year in Dubai, 2 months before you were there for your last conference. They trialed the first ever autonomous taxi drone. These are aircraft flying, no things to change around the infrastructure. So the technology is moving faster than the industries are able to because they're stuck in this old way of thinking. The other thing I find really funny about this kind of thinking is, think about the challenge that the regulators have. Do you know the first law, and the UK weren't alone in this, but the UK brilliantly passed this law, the first ever law for the provision of autonomous vehicles on UK highways, is that there must be, at all times, inside the vehicle, a human being. I don't know, let's call them the driver, right? Whose job it is to monitor. This is the madness of that kind of thinking. But the real challenge of this thinking is neither of these problems. It's simply this, it's the opportunity cost of that thinking. Because for every second that an automotive engineer is thinking that this is the future of transportation, no one's working on these, but more specifically, no one's working on this. This is, if we were starting from today and somebody said, how would you like to get about? This is what we would choose. But we can't do that because we can't make that leap. So my request to you is to get out of your industry. Get out of your client's industry. Look to where the pinballs are bouncing. Anticipate the ricochets and bring that back to provide insight. So the final thing I want to leave you with is really about technology. And technology is going to be so important to you. But let me tell you right now, as a lifelong technologist, I am telling you, technology is the least important of all of your worries. It's not that it's irrelevant. It's just at the bottom of the pile. And I can think of no better way to bring this to life than to call upon a quote from Pablo Picasso, of all people, who brilliantly, in the mid-60s in Paris, he's being interviewed by some art magazine, and they said to him, and why they asked Pablo this question, I don't know, I mean, I wasn't there, right? They said, hey, Pablo, what do you think about computers? And even though the computers in Pablo's mid-60s Paris are completely different to the computers we have today in our pockets and on our desks, his answer was genius, because it's still so true. He just said, computers are useless. All they can give me is answers. What I need is something that can ask the right questions. And ladies and gentlemen, that's something. Guess what? It's you. That's your bloody job. Your job is to figure out what is the question that we're actually trying to answer as an organization, as a team, as an individual. Because if you're crisp and you're clear and you really understand what that question is, you don't need me to tell you, but the technology will make short work of the results. So look, this is not my future. This is not a world that we're heading into. The internet is not Skynet, and the Terminator is not around the corner. This is my future. It's a very different place. It's a very simple place. I want a world where we human beings, we can stand tall, high and proud, right up on the shoulders of these digital giants that we've created. We use technology to extend our reach as human beings, not to replace us. If we can do that, and we equip everybody in our society, everybody in the workforce, whether it's our organization, whether it's other organizations, whether it's our children, with basic skills. And these are not, again, things like Word or PowerPoint. It's things like critical thinking, creative thinking, deep thinking, the ability to communicate and collaborate, the ability to keep each other safe when we're online. If we make sure that every human has access to all those skills, then and only then can we as human beings rise up and live up to all of the potential that technology has to offer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much.